Hey guys, Bob Hertzog, your real estate dad. Today I had the pleasure of having my best friend in the industry and just my best friend in general, Lizy Hoeffer, on to talk about a subject that's a little dark, a little darker than I like to talk about, which is divorce. But unfortunately, it does happen and we have to deal with it in our industry as well. I think you're going to get a ton out of watching this today, a ton of great information. And I think that the key thing that I got from it was Lizzie spends some time talking about the importance of having a plan and planning before you get to this divorce situation so that you're not making decisions based on emotion, because that's where you can get into trouble. So take a minute, take some time to watch this. Maybe you're not going through this. Hopefully you're not, but maybe you have a friend, family member, or coworker, or someone that's getting ready to go through this that will probably get a lot out of it. So hope you enjoy it, and we'll talk soon. Hey, Lizzie,
Hey, Bob.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for swinging by today. We're in a new studio today. Instead of on Zoom and in our own offices, we got to sit across the table from each other. So this is going to be kind of fun. Normally, for those people out there that have watched us talk together in the past, we're always talking about mortgage rates and where the market's going, and that was really kind of the plan when I set this up, a week or two ago with you, was to do our normal mortgage podcast type thing. But just over the last couple of weeks, I've had something come up that on a couple of different occasions that I wanted to chat with you about, because I know you probably have, even more experience than I do with situations, especially divorce right now is what we're starting to see. I'm starting to see it a little more from clients. They're calling me. There's they call it the 5 Ds sometimes in real estate that make people want to move. The divorce, diamonds, which someone gets married, diapers when someone has a kid. There's a couple more out there, but the one thing that's come up in my conversations just in the last month is divorce, and I wanted to just kind of sit down with you today and talk about some of the challenges that you see out there when unfortunately people have a situation where a divorce happens. And obviously, everyone's biggest asset that they have in their portfolio is their home, and that needs to be dealt with when it comes time for a divorce. And there's various ways that it can be dealt with. So I just wanted to go over like some of the typical scenarios you see out there, and some of the challenges and how you work your way around it, because I mean, unfortunately there might be people watching this today that are getting ready to go through that process, or maybe you're in the middle of it right now. The one thing that I will preface this with for both of our for the sake of both of us, is that we're not attorneys and we're not going to give legal advice and don't intend to give any legal advice. We're just sharing this part of the divorce situation that we end up having to deal with. In the past, for years, they used to have a what they call the real estate commissioners list that you had to be a part of through the state of Arizona in order to be a real estate agent in a divorce situation. And I've had several cases where I've stepped in and done that, sold homes for folks going through a divorce. And it's always tricky, to because you really do, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit in our conversation, but, one of the biggest things I've found is trying to be as neutral as possible and being more of the referee, and trying to help both parties, and you're always going to get pressure from both sides and opinions from both sides and so forth. So, agents can get kinda caught in the middle of it, but, the one thing that came up in a conversation I had with someone the other day is they have not only a home, but they have other properties that they own together. Uh, one is out of state, one in the West Valley, so forth. And just listening to my client slash friend talk to me about what they're going through and the headaches and so forth, I just thought because I know you've dealt with this, with clients in the past. I thought we'd just get together and talk real quick about, what are you seeing out there and how are you handling these things?
Yeah. So just a couple things because people are maybe new to me and maybe not new to me. So I deal with this on a professional level just with clients, and I've also been through divorce.
Mhm.
So I know both personally and professionally what it's like. And if you've ever bought a home, I think they consider it the second most stressful short-term event in a person's life, and the first is death of a family member. And it's because you have to make so many quick decisions, in a very short period of time, not to mention, like, come up with all kinds of documentation, and just whenever you're under the gun, people just tend to get more emotional. It's the place you're gonna live, it's your financial security. So there's a lot riding on it, and then when you add into the mix, conflict or just there is sadness there with changing circumstances. For me, like disrupting our family unit was very, very sad to me. So when you add in, potentially conflict and sadness, then there's all kinds of emotions and pressure and finances. It's a recipe. It's definitely a recipe.
Mm.
I'm not sure what it's making.
Yeah.
And depending on how you do it or when you start in the process, can make things stressful or less stressful. But here's what I always tell people, right? People know that they're headed for a divorce. I would say 2 to 4 years prior to the actual divorce itself. I had been thinking about divorce for a really long time, as you know. One of Bob's also happens to be one of my personal friends. Um, and, I would say this as somebody who like works in finances, figuring out my budget ahead of time was really important and giving me clarity on that decision.
Mm.
So whether you're the primary wage earner or you're not, knowing what your financial place is, okay, if I was left with half, right? Because most places in most states, it's a 50-50 split on all assets. And again, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know what you've signed prior to, you
Mhm.
know, getting married, but it typically is like a 50-50 division in assets. So if you can think of, okay, I get this much money hypothetically, and this is what my earnings are, what could I afford?
Mm.
And afford is like also kind of a tricky concept because if you just talk to any mortgage broker or any loan officer, they're going to tell you what you qualify for. And that's a very different number. What you can safely afford is what allows you to continue the lifestyle that you feel comfortable living and still make a house payment. If the house that you want is going to prevent you from living the life that you want, that's not the right budget,
Right.
right? Even if you can qualify for it. So it's really establishing affordability and then from there, it's working backwards. But I would generally say, people who are in the midst of divorce, right? It is such an emotional time. It's very difficult to make a clear financial decision. And any decision I find that's made in high emotional times is always one you regret.
Right. Right.
And so, depending on when, so a lot of people I talk to are actually just in the process of thinking about it. They just want to get their ducks in a row. Sometimes I'm talking to somebody in the midst of it, and that's probably the most challenging.
Yeah. That's where I tend to get them is when they're in the midst of it. Okay. They'll probably contact, I would think in a case like this, most people would contact their lender to find out what can I, like you started off talking about, what can I afford or is this even feasible? What am I going to do if we have to sell the house? Sure, I'll get half of the equity, but is that even enough to put down on another home? And, oh, by the way, I haven't worked for the last 15 years because I've been at home raising the kids while my husband's been at work, and so I don't have an income. And I mean, there's a lot of these challenges that come up that, I mean, it's best for them to, I mean, you are the person to call when it seems like this is really gonna happen, just to get a
Yeah.
game plan beforehand, right?
Yeah, I would highly recommend so it's normally the planners and the initiators are the ones that are having the conversation before they
Okay.
get divorced, right? So there is, typically a party that is either unprepared or, they were unprepared about the new change in circumstance. And that's always really hard. But normally you'll hear from the planners ahead of time, right? They just want to
Mhm.
get their ducks in a row. And then for the people that are in the midst of it, right, I would definitely talk to a real estate agent and a loan officer prior to any divorce settlements because a lot of people, especially homemakers, don't know what the rules are for qualifying income.
Right.
And so they will either get not enough in child support and they'll overdo the alimony, which is shorter term, or they won't get enough length of time, or they won't have collected it in the midst of their settlement, right? So they have to wait an extended period. So for most mortgage companies, you have to receive alimony and child support 6 months prior to being able to use it as qualifying income.
Oh, wow.
And then
So if you haven't even filed for divorce yet, you've got a long wait.
it's a minimum 6 months of
Yeah.
receipt, right? And so then you both have to be in agreement of what that's gonna be prior to your actual settlement, right? So there's ways to do this during divorce, but that's one of the challenges that most people don't anticipate. And then from there, from the first payment date, there has to be 36 months of continuous payments after that. So, I will talk to people who, like, have been receiving the alimony or the support payments for 6 months. They're like, "Great, I have it for 6 months, but now it's only gonna continue for 2.5 more years, and then I can't use it."
Okay, so and I don't mean to cut you off,
Nope.
but the lender is you're gonna ask, or your, underwriters or whoever is gonna ask for, receipts, or not receipts, but bank statements showing that this has happened over this period of.
And we're gonna ask for whatever settlement awarded that.
That was the other thing I was gonna ask you, is if lenders require to see a copy of the
Yes.
settlement, the divorce decree, or what have you.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so that really puts, the homemaker in a bind in a lot of cases, it sounds like.
It does. Now, that's not the only way that you can qualify.
Okay.
Like, I deal a lot with people that are in high net divorce situations, so people who are just getting a big lump sum. And technically those people and they're not of retirement age, right? So those people wouldn't necessarily have an income, but they have assets. And so oftentimes you can use assets to help offset income qualifications. But again, you have to talk to a loan officer and you have to know what your goals are.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part in a divorce process is that, like, the life you planned
Yeah.
is no longer, and you have to have a full life plan in a short period of time,
Right.
for what you're gonna be doing next.
Which gets even more difficult as you get older, because you have less time and you're less maybe qualified to go find a position at a company or somewhere to, employment, right? I mean, that becomes.
I think every season has its
Yep.
challenges, but it is just one of those where, like, this was the life and the trajectory you were headed on, and now this is a screeching halt. We're gonna make a hard left here,
Yeah.
and then you have to make all of these big financial decisions, and a divorce process can be short and it can also be very lengthy. And so depending on how long that process takes, to get your assets or to get a settlement, or you're like in limbo for a really long time.
Mhm. You started off talking about, uh, the fact that there's a planner and then there's the person that's surprised. Okay. In both cases I've had in the last month, that's exactly what happened, where one or the other, the husband or the wife, was caught totally off guard. They didn't even know it was coming. And the other one had already done some planning. Would you say that that's what happens in most cases, or is there, I would think that there would be more of a, this isn't working out. What do you think? But I guess it doesn't.
I mean, and I don't mean
I-
to laugh.
No,
I just
I thank God, knock on wood.
so,
I mean, 32, 30, well, it's going to kill me. 33 years of being married. I've never had to deal with this. Thank goodness.
so
So,
in my case, I was like both the planner and I was also really caught off guard.
yeah,
So I've been in both, but here's what I will say. Yeah, there are definitely some cases where people just know that they're not a right fit. They've fallen out of love. They're still friends.
yeah,
And that sounds like the most ideal situation in life.
right,
Um, but like with most things, people who get along well, they don't get divorced.
right.
And so more often than not, what we do see is this case where somebody is completely prepared and and I wouldn't say that they don't know, they just were not prepared to be divorced yet.
Right.
Right? And that was me. I had I knew we were very dysfunctional for a long time. I had contemplated divorce. I'd definitely done some planning, but I wasn't prepared to get divorced yet. And either there's a circumstance that happens that makes that happen immediately, or the other person is like, "You know what? I'm just done." It's just that's what happens,
Yeah.
right? I think it's rare that you have 2 people that are like, "Same day, this is what I want."
Yeah. Yeah. I've never thought about the we get caught up in that as real estate agents. We forget we do this every day. We sell homes every day. So you forget how emotional the home buying and selling process is until you do it yourself and you're like, holy cow, no wonder people freak out about, showing their home at all hours of the day with minimal notice and so forth. But you take the divorce thing, you throw that in, and then we didn't even talk about, like, you have kids in a divorce. That's just a whole different level of stress that goes on. Now you're having to deal with this home and who's going to stay there, who can stay there. I mean, that's got to be tough too, because chances are, I would think in most cases, either the husband or the wife wants to stay in the home. Okay. But
It's all over the place.
yeah,
I think the biggest thing is that because it's such an emotional time, people make a lot of mistakes.
yes,
And the biggest mistakes that I see people make in the divorce process, especially when it concerns real estate, is one, keeping up the current lifestyle that they had, right? Without making adjustments. It is a financial change, no matter what it is, whether you're the primary wage earner or not.
right,
All of a sudden, you have now split half of your assets. You have additional expenses you were not anticipating. Like you might be the person paying alimony or child support, or you've decided to take on debt that, by yourself. You've lost an income potentially. And so it is a big financial disruption. And the biggest mistake is people just like immediately want to move on to the next property at the same level without recalibrating. So that's number one, the biggest mistake. And then number two, it's like they haven't thought through it long enough, right? So they have kids. Like, and I personally am guilty of this. I wanted to buy right away. And I wanted to buy right away because I wanted to keep my kids in the same school district. I wanted certainty. I wanted to nest.
yeah,
I wanted to be as stable as possible. And I did all of the things you shouldn't do. I had a super quick close of escrow. I didn't do enough inspections. I bought the first house I saw because I just wanted to get out.
hmm
And a lot of the decisions that I made financially were based in desperation. Like I just wanted this to be
you wanted to
over.
put it behind you,
Oh
and
God.
just get everything that you had just dealt with in the
Yeah, I
rearview
just
mirror.
wanted it out.
Yeah,
And because of that, I bought a house and it had all kinds of issues. I had to like be in an Airbnb because I had to replace the plumbing.
yeah, I remember that.
And I didn't quite think of like, in my mind, I was going to die a spinster. So this tiny bathroom
Yeah,
off the master was just like, okay, whatever, I can deal with that. I'm a single girl. But then I'm a single woman with 3 kids that want to use my bathroom while I'm getting ready. It was like impossible with no closet.
right,
These are all the things I was willing to do,
yeah,
right? To get a house that was in walking distance.
right,
And not to mention, I also feel like I didn't recalibrate for what it was gonna be to buy an even more expensive house because house prices had gone up.
right,
And even though I could qualify for it, I didn't anticipate that change in my budget also.
yeah.
And if I could do this all again, okay, I probably would have waited 6 more months. Okay. Less emotional, figured out the area, you
You would
know.
have maybe gone and just rented something for 6 months in the area.
I thought during my divorce process,
Okay,
I don't know necessarily, like, it depends on how your situation is. For me, I no longer wanted to cohabitate with
right,
my ex-spouse, and so I just wanted to be out of that house.
right,
And so we did it for a couple months. I didn't really feel like it was feasible. Some people have the opportunity to move into family, some people move into an apartment.
yeah,
Yeah, whatever that short term is, I probably would have just waited to buy until after my divorce settlement was done, so that way I could have made a clear decision,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm always somebody who wants to invest as soon as I can because for me it is an investment. So buying a piece of real estate was like, "Oh gosh, I've got to buy something so that way I can start working on my net worth again."
right,
And buying at the time that I bought was a good opportunity. I made, 6 figures on that property. I felt really good about it, but it did cause me some stress. And waiting another 6 months wouldn't have cost me that.
yeah, yeah. In most cases, what I mean, it seems like in a lot of cases, I don't know if it's always or often, both spouses, whatever, husband and wife both want the house.
Yeah, that
Can the
happens.
court decide who gets to keep it? Can the judge force you to sell the home? If let's say neither person can afford the home, could qualify. I mean, from a mortgage standpoint, you've got 2 people on a mortgage now, and they're getting a divorce. One of them might come to you and say, "Lizzie, can you do a loan just with me on it?" What is the process there as a lender when let's just say that husband and wife decides she's gonna go rent something and husband wants to keep the house. And husband comes to you and says, "What do we do?" What are the steps that you take them through at that point?
So here's what I would say. It makes the most sense to do that when the divorce is settled because you can use the divorce decree to eliminate the loan level price adjustment for a cash out refinance if you're using it to buy out the other spouse.
Okay.
So there are cost differences when you're pulling cash out for like investments, debt payoff, home improvements, and then when you're just doing an equity buyout.
Yeah.
So it's better pricing wise. You'll get a better rate, lower fees if you wait till after the divorce is settled, and then you can use it as like part of that settlement.
Okay.
And so what we'll see is the divorce decree, and then we'll include that payoff in the loan to value. We'll increase your loan amount to cover that percentage. And then at closing, you will both sign some paperwork. They're going to be disclaiming off the property and paying you out. And then the title company will give you your portion when you close if you're the spouse that's vacating.
Right. So in most cases, do people have to wait until the divorce is settled? Obviously, before they can really they have to stay together on that loan until they get the decree?
Mo Look, most cases, yes.
Okay.
There are things like a Rule 69 that can exclude assets, and you guys can just make determinations asset per asset. That is something that we did during
Oh,
our divorce,
okay.
you know? Um, but if you're trying to, like, make it the cleanest possible, you would wait till afterwards.
Okay.
Um, and I will say this, like, the dust really settles, like, many months after you decide to get a divorce. Like,
Okay.
there's things that you find out after the fact in every case,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
But I would say that if one person can qualify for the mortgage themselves, the payout is essentially easy. It's like 30 to 45 days. It's paid out through title, so there is no exchanging of hands, you know what I mean? It's just signing paperwork. You can do that separately with a notary,
Yeah.
and it's just like qualifying for a house.
Yeah. So walk us through a quick scenario. Like,
Yeah.
let's say uh, husband and wife are getting a divorce. They're in a house that is worth $1 million and they owe 500,000 on it. So at that point, uh, you're going to have to basically rewrite a loan for whatever spouse is going to stay in the house at
So,
the
like,
value,
I'm
right?
glad that you did this, like, good, like, easy math.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So in this case, right, they owe 500, the equity is like 500. That equity is split typically depending on the settlement. So in most cases it's 50-50.
Yep.
So the spouse that's going to retain the property is going to qualify for the 500 and the 250.
Oh,
Okay, so the loan to value at this case is 75%.
yeah,
So they get a loan for 750, the 250 is paid out at closing. Now, where it becomes challenging is a lot of people have these super low interest rates
yeah.
and they don't want to relinquish them. So one thing that I will say is that if people have other assets, you can pay out the equity in other assets like retirement stocks, etc. So they just have to be equalized, right? And what you can do is a release of liability. So you can contact your servicing company and say, "Hey, we're getting a divorce. This is another reason to have a divorce settlement, and I would like to assume all responsibility for this loan."
Okay.
And a lot of companies have now, even on conventional loans, have worked out a way to do this.
Wow, that's interesting because you'd think they want to keep their hooks in as many people as possible from a liability standpoint on the loan, right?
And they have historically. And so not every bank will do this, but a lot of companies have. And they do this because, like the biggest goal is for to get an on-time paid mortgage,
Yes.
and so if somebody can qualify and assume it, great.
So even if the loan isn't assumable, the bank might.
Might release liabilities. So it's a release of liabilities. So
Okay.
there's a lot of people who still have to qualify for this. It's bank per bank, but it is another way for you to not have to relinquish that if you had other assets, or let's say you were able to get a line of credit out and pay out the equity.
Right. Right. Okay. Got it. Interesting. What are you seeing? I mean, it's
Well,
kind of
we
a
see all
dark
over the
subject,
place.
but I mean, are you seeing more
Yes.
divorce situations in the last year or 2 years than in the past? I mean, you've
Yeah.
been in the business how long now?
At 20 years.
20 years. I mean,
I mean, I will say this. I've definitely put out a lot more divorce content just because when I went through it, I mean, I've helped so many people through it. And I will say this, I was very transactional. It's like people came to me, it's like, okay, great, here are the steps. Having gone through it and known how, like, I mean, it is like you're talking to me today and I seem fine. But when I say that it was probably the most traumatic event in my entire life, that would maybe be an understatement. I mean, it was so disruptive to me, my kids, my finances. I imagine my ex-spouse. I mean, it was so disruptive. And having done that and being as well educated as I am on finances, being very committed to like my budget, my investments.
and having a very nice income and a job that pays well. I mean, think about the homemaker, the mom that doesn't work, and all of a sudden she's got to go qualify for a loan. What that added level of stress is,
100 it's
you know?
anyone.
Right.
But I mean, like, you can so I felt the stress, but it's also the person who is divorcing that then now also has to pay alimony, child support,
Yeah.
and then a new house payment. It is extremely stressful, and so, me just educating people on what it is,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I can tell you that as from the offside of that, because I was the primary wage earner, like, the guilt you feel from disrupting your family will also make you make terrible financial decisions.
Yes.
And I had a wonderful attorney
Mm.
who, like, kept me from making stupid agreements, but sometimes you're willing to, like, overpay in a situation because you just feel bad.
Right.
And, like, I will see oftentimes that primary wage earners will also not be able to qualify because of the way their divorce settlement was structured. So, this is why I think the biggest mistake are these financial decisions made in emotion.
Yeah.
You have to go, "Okay, this is my state today. Where do I plan on being in 3 to 5 years?" In 3 to 5 years, chances are you're with a different partner. In 3 to 5 years, you most certainly, if you owned a home today, you'll wanna own a home then.
Yeah.
You, like you will wanna figure out you wanna be able to have a lifestyle that allows you to vacation, travel, like, you know, go on dates, work out, adopt new hobbies.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of I won't go uh deep into the weeds on this, but that's I started my residential real estate brokerage, so to speak, or brokering residential real estate during the short sale times. And it's almost similar to that. I mean, you have to picture yourself 3 to 5 years from now saying, "I'm not gonna be in this position 3 to 5 years from now." I just know it, maybe it's getting a different job or like you said, finding another partner. Back in the short sale days, I spent a lot of time across the kitchen table like you and I are sitting right now with people telling them that, "So you have to rent for a year or 2. It's not that big a deal." Right? I mean, and not that this, divorce means rental, so to speak, but that was an option that people didn't wanna think about. They were used to owning their own homes and
There's a lot of pride in ownership. I mean, it is the American dream.
yeah, and what I found, and I still I remember this like it was yesterday. W What I learned in helping literally well over 100 people go through short sales during that time was it's the stress leading up to the decision that's so stressful. It's the indecision that causes the stress, and it's like, I'm sure that when you go through a divorce, just like if, because we had people that, as wiped out their entire savings, their retirement, everything just to keep making those payments during the foreclosure crisis and got wiped out completely. And if they would have just done a short sale or taken another avenue early on, instead they just kept dragging it out and just couldn't make that decision. Once the decision was made, we're going to do a short sale or we're just going to walk away from this house, it was like the world was lifted off their shoulders because it was just that indecision, right? So,
I mean, that the best night's sleep I had in years was the night I spent in my house when I moved in the middle of my divorce. It's like the first real good night of sleep. And it's because I knew that was the direction. This was my future. And
Mhm.
like I only say to be more patient because I would have planned better.
Right.
And so there are a couple things I just want to share for people who like might be in the process. If you're a primary wage earner, you really do have to anticipate a budget that includes whatever spousal maintenance and child support you're going to have to pay in addition to the house that you're going to want to qualify for, the lifestyle, right? So this is going to adjust your settlement process and how you negotiate. Right. So you want to be able to talk this over and you want to get a really good lawyer who understands finances. Because sometimes in lieu of paying such high amounts, right, for child support, you might opt to do a larger lump sum,
Mm.
right? And these are the types of things that you can figure out when you have properly planned.
And they're all negotiable.
And they're all negotiable. These are negotiable. We're just talking about an equalization of division of assets.
Right.
Now, when you are somebody who has not been the primary wage earner, when you're somebody who might be a homemaker, right? Then it's like, okay, what will I need to be able to launch from this place?
Yeah.
How long will I need this? How much assets do I need? Again, the planning is super important. And one thing to note, if you are somebody who is going to be a displaced homemaker, you actually will re-qualify for the 3% down, low down payment options that first time homebuyers get.
Really?
Yep, and that is something that most people don't know. So, like somebody who is being displaced who hasn't been the primary wage earner who may have owned a home before, right? That person's going to have a harder time coming up with this huge down payment.
Absolutely.
And when I say huge, I'm talking about 5%, but the extra 2% matters,
Oh, absolutely.
And so having that flexibility I think is huge.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that you could qualify as a first-time home buyer after you've gone through a divorce, even though you just came out of a mortgage, right? That
Can. And people don't know that, and those are things. And so here's what I would do. I would sit down and talk to somebody who understands the divorce process and works with people that can help you with divorce, right? So I have a network of attorneys who are amazing, who understand real estate, who understand finances, who aren't just going to process your paperwork.
perfect.
They're also not going to charge you an arm and a leg, right? It's a very emotional process. I would say this another mistake that people make is they spend all of their money talking to their attorney about the problems.
Right.
Right? But
Right.
they are people that understand, "Hey, this is what I need from you. Okay, this is what we wanna do," and they put you in contact with the CPA, they put you in contact with a financial planner. Like, you shouldn't be creating a settlement or a budget without help.
So they have a team of
Mhm.
experts that, good attorneys, good divorce attorneys will have a CPA and a financial planner to have you talk to before you even get to that stage where you're like, okay, it's happening.
I mean, I do. I mean, if somebody comes to me
Yeah.
and they don't have an accountant, they don't have a financial planner, they don't have like a comprehensive understanding of what their finances are and will be, like that person has no business negotiating their future.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you get a lump sum as one of the spouses, you need to find out, like talk to a CPA to find out, are there things that you can do to avoid as much tax or whatever on that lump sum? Are there IRA options or 401k? I mean, just
There's
100%.
a lot for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, oh, this is great. I mean, I think if nothing else, people should have learned from our little chat today is if they're going there, if they're thinking about it and they think it's a pretty, good chance that it's going to happen, they just need to pick up the phone and call you first and let you at least give them some options of people to contact. Much like people call me all the time when they need, "Hey, Bob, do you know someone that can redo our kitchen? Or do you have a good plumber? Do you have a good electrician?" If you're going or getting ready to go through a divorce, then Lizzie you'd be a great first
I
first
would love
contact
to get
just to get them pointed in the right direction and spend a little time helping them come up with their roadmap so that they don't jump ahead and let emotion get the best of them, because that's what emotion does too. Like you were saying earlier, it makes you make some pretty bad decisions just out of emotion,
I
right?
mean, and there's so many. I mean, they say there's 7 stages of grief.
Yeah.
I like to think that we're all like little people that ride emotional elephants,
Yeah.
right? And for the most part, we know how to guide those emotional elephants everywhere. But let's not kid ourselves. The elephant will always be stronger than the rider,
Absolutely.
and it will always do things that we end up regretting later.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a situation that is more stressful for
Mhm.
everything, like your short-term financial event, disruptive in all ways possible. You have all kinds of trauma, hurt, etcetera, that are added onto it. I mean, it is a lot. Not to mention you might also be selling a property, so you have 2 really stressful events happening at the same time.
Absolutely.
In addition to, like, having to work with a person you may not like anymore.
Right. Right. Very interesting. Gosh, that's why I had you on. I knew I'd learn a ton, and I knew that the people that are watching this will learn a lot, and hopefully they're not at that stage or thinking about that stage. No one likes to see someone go through that process, especially in my case where it's in your case too, where these are people that in my case, it's people that I know both spouses very well because I helped them buy their home together. And it's tough to hear the stories and hear the stress that they're going through with this process. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. I was like, there's some people that could use this information out there. So that's why I wanted to bring you on because you're like my go-to for anything like this. You just have a mind like not very many people I know that you can there's so many situations that you can walk people through. It's not just about doing their mortgage. It's not, for me, it's not just about selling them a house. These are relationships, these are friends and
But that's what makes you so great.
yeah,
The
thank
fact
you.
that you care beyond a transaction. Like, I always like to consider you like a big brother,
Yeah,
right? You're the guy that I go to for big brother, dad advice.
right.
Not that you're old enough to be my dad, but I mean, it's like you're the guy who cares. And you're going to shoot it to me real. You're going to provide me information and you're going to care what happens to me
Yeah.
after the fact.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you want in people who are going to help you with finances. Good people have to be in positions like ours to be able to guide people in the right direction because you and I both know there are a lot of realtors, there's a lot of lenders out there that do not care.
No.
That do not care. It's a transaction for them and they're on to the next once you close.
And even more real estate agents that they're just there for the commission.
I mean, it just is. It's like your situation is just one of many.
Yeah.
And the thing is, my favorite part of you is how much you care.
Yeah.
How the fact is you're like, I don't know if this is going to help me, but I know this is going to help you.
Yeah.
Right. And I want people to have the information that they might not have.
Right. It's how I sleep well at night. And same for you, right? I mean, I go to bed every night knowing that exactly what you just said, that my whole purpose in this thing is just to take care of people and it always comes back tenfold. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time today. This has been very enlightening, very educational. And let's see if we can go out there and help some more people.
Got it, Bob.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You bet.